It's strange how silence feels heavier near the ocean. You'd think the waves crashing against the rocks would make it feel alive, but here, at the edge of Greymarsh Point, even the sea sounded hollow. My name is Eli Carter, and for nearly 5 months I was the caretaker of the old Greymarsh Lighthouse, a relic built in the late 1800s. The government hired me after the previous keeper, an old man named Porter, went missing without a trace. They said he probably slipped on the rocks during a storm. But when I arrived, I found something that told me otherwise. Porter hadn't left, at least not willingly. The lighthouse stood tall against the gray sky, paint peeling like sunburnt skin. Inside, the air smelled of brine and rust. I climbed the spiral staircase, my boots echoing in the narrow chamber, until I reached the lantern room at the top. That's when I saw it. A smear, brownish red on the glass near the light. It wasn't thick, but it was there, shaped almost like a handprint. I told myself it was rust, salt, anything but blood. The first night was uneventful. Wind howled through the cracks, waves slammed against the cliffs below, and the light swept across the black ocean every 10 seconds. I fell asleep to its rhythm. But the second night, I woke up to footsteps. Slow, careful, coming up the stairs. I froze. The radio was dead, my flashlight battery fading. I could hear the steps stop just outside my door. Then a voice, hoarse, wet, whispered, "You left the light on." I kicked the door open. Nothing. The staircase was empty. I didn't sleep that night. Over the next week, it got worse. Every night the lantern flickered around the same hour, 2:13 a.m. I'd climb the stairs expecting a burnt-out bulb or a wiring issue, but the equipment was fine. Yet every time I reached the top, the air felt wrong, like the walls were breathing. One morning, while cleaning near the base, I found an old logbook in the supply room. Porter's handwriting was neat, but frantic toward the end. The light won't go out. I shut it down, and it turns itself back on. I hear them in the sea. They whisper when the fog rolls in. The faces, they watch from the rocks. That same night, the fog rolled in thick as cement. I stepped outside, flashlight in hand, and shined it toward the cliff edge. There were faces, pale, dripping, like drowned people staring up through the mist. And then the light turned off. The entire ocean went black. The silence swallowed everything. Then, from below, I heard it, a slow, dragging sound on the rocks, like something climbing. I ran up the spiral stairs 2 at a time. The lantern room was pitch dark. I grabbed the manual switch and threw it. The bulb sparked, flared, and I saw a reflection in the glass. A man, soaked to the bone, face gray and eyes hollow, standing right behind me. When I turned around, he was gone. I found Porter's raincoat later that week, wedged in the rocks at the base of the cliff. Inside the pocket was a key. The tag read, "Storage, do not open." But of course I opened it. The storage room beneath the lighthouse was small. The air was heavy and sour. In the corner was an old chest, locked from the outside. I pried it open. Inside were bones, small bones, and a lantern that was still glowing faintly, underwater. That was the night I left Greymarsh. They say the new caretaker didn't last a week, said he heard someone knocking on the inside of the light room glass every 10 seconds.
When I was younger, I worked as a marine biologist for the North Atlantic Research Department. Our team was sent to study the coral ecosystems near Briar Isle, a remote island once home to a lighthouse that guided trade ships through the channel. The lighthouse had been abandoned since the 1970s. Locals said it was haunted. We laughed at that. We weren't there for ghosts. By the second week, I realized how wrong we were. Our camp sat near the shore, a few hundred feet from the old tower. At night, the sea glowed faintly with bioluminescence, a beautiful, eerie blue. But sometimes the glow would vanish, like something large was moving beneath it. One night, while collecting samples, I noticed a beam of light sweep across the bay. It came from the lighthouse, the one with no power. We thought it was a prank. My colleague, Dr. Hannah Reed, and I climbed the hill the next morning. The door was swollen shut, but we broke it open. Inside, it smelled of salt and rot. Seaweed hung from the rafters. Up the stairs, I found footprints, wet, bare, leading to the lantern room. The lamp was cold, dead metal, but the glass was smeared from the inside. Someone had been here recently. That night, I heard Hannah whispering in her sleep. When I asked her who she was talking to, she said, half dreaming, "They're calling from the light. They want me to see." The next morning, she was gone. We searched everywhere, the beach, the cliffs, the tide pools, but there were no signs of her. Only her notebook found near the base of the lighthouse. On the last page, she'd written, "The light is not a signal, it's a door." That evening, the light turned on again. Against every instinct, I climbed up. The glass shimmered faintly from inside, pulsing like a heartbeat. And when I looked into it, I saw her, Hannah, floating, smiling, behind the glass. She pressed her hand against it, and for a second, I swear I felt warmth. Then her smile cracked, literally. Her face split open, revealing a hollow, black void beneath. The glass burst, the light went out, and from the sea below, something screamed. I ran until I hit the beach. The sea glowed again, but this time it wasn't blue, it was red. The island was evacuated 2 days later, after a storm destroyed what was left of the lighthouse. The Coast Guard said the beam was never powered, no wiring, no generator. But sometimes, on foggy nights, fishermen swear they see that same red light cutting through the mist. My name's Rebecca Holloway, and this story still keeps me awake 20 years later. When I was 9, my father took a job as the head keeper of Eagle's Rest Lighthouse off the coast of Maine. It was just the two of us and the waves. No neighbors, no visitors, just isolation and fog. At first, it felt like an adventure. Climbing the spiral stairs, helping polish the lens, Dad said I'd grow up to be a keeper's girl. I didn't know then what that would mean. The first sign something was wrong came one night when I woke to the sound of my father talking upstairs. He was speaking softly, like comforting someone. But we were alone. When I crept up, He was standing by the window, staring at the black ocean. He didn't turn when I asked who he was talking to. He just said, quietly, "She's back." In the morning, he didn't remember saying that. Over the next few weeks, the air grew colder. Dad stopped eating. He'd stare at the light, whispering things I couldn't hear. I'd hear faint laughter from inside the walls, soft and high like a little girl's. Then one morning, I found wet footprints on the stairs, small ones, bare feet, leading all the way to my room. Dad finally told me the truth. Before we moved in, there had been another keeper, Thomas Reed, and his daughter, Clara. She drowned one night after falling into the tide pool during a storm. Her father never forgave himself. They said he jumped from the light room days later. That night, the sea raged harder than ever. Dad went out to check the generator and didn't come back. I waited. Hours. Then I heard it, tapping on the window. When I looked, I saw her. A little girl, pale and dripping, standing in the floodlight's edge. Her eyes were pitch black. She smiled and said, "He's with me now." The door slammed open behind me. The wind howled through the tower. The light flickered and then burst. I don't remember running, but the next thing I knew, the Coast Guard was pulling me from the rocks at dawn. They never found my father's body, but when they drained the tide pool days later, they found 2 sets of footprints, one adult, one child-sized, leading toward the water. The lighthouse still stands. The new keepers say sometimes when the fog rolls in, you can hear a man's voice whisper from the top, "Keep the light burning. She's still out there."